The Sunrise House Orphanage was a tired, gray building on a hill, but to Elias, it was the only world he had ever known. He was 15, tall for his age, with quiet eyes that seemed to hold all the dust and silence of the old place. Elias did not have many friends among the other boys. His entire world centered on one person, Clara. Clara was a year younger than Elias, and she was the reason he woke up every morning before the first bell rang. She had the most beautiful, dark brown hair and a smile that, when it came, felt like a sudden ray of sun in the dusty attic room they shared as a bedroom. But Clara's legs were weak. A childhood illness had left them thin and unreliable. She could move short distances with a wobbly metal frame, but for everything else, getting to the cold dining hall, going outside to the small, patchy garden, or just moving from her bed to the window, she needed help. That help was always Elias. He saw the way the other children looked at her, sometimes with pity, mostly with the simple impatience of healthy children. They did not wait for her. They did not want to push her worn, heavy wheelchair. They did not like the slow, quiet rhythm that followed Clara wherever she went. Elias did not see a burden. He saw Clara. His day began with a careful lift. Clara's bones were light, but he moved her with the focus of a clockmaker handling delicate gears. He dressed her in the stiff, scratchy uniforms, making sure the knots in her shoelaces were tight, but not too tight. He combed her long hair until it shone, a job Clara insisted he do because he never tugged. "Good morning, my son," he would whisper, a name he had invented just for her, one that no one else in the Sunrise House knew. "Good morning, my tall shadow," she would reply, her voice a little bell, clear and sweet. The worst part of the day was the journey to the dining hall. The old orphanage had thick, heavy doors and a sloping ramp that was always covered in leaves or thin ice, depending on the season. Elias would grab the handles of the heavy chair, planting his feet firmly, pushing steadily. He never rushed. He knew the small, sudden jerks hurt her tired body. The other boys would rush past, shouting about games or breakfast. Elias would ignore them. He was a mountain moving slowly, carefully, protecting the small life on his peak. One morning, Mr. Davies, the tired man who ran the orphanage, watched Elias struggle with the ramp. Mr. Davies was not a mean man, just overwhelmed. "Elias," he said, his voice husky, "the chair is too old. It's too heavy for you. You will hurt yourself." Elias paused, breathing hard, the muscle in his arms already burning. "I am strong, sir. We manage. Clara needs it." Mr. Davies sighed and shook his head. "One day you will be gone. Who will push her then?" Elias looked down at Clara, whose small hand was gripping the armrest. Her eyes were wide, fearing the answer. "No one," Elias said simply, pushing the thought of separation away like a bad cloud. "I won't be gone, sir." He could have been adopted. He was polite, strong, and smart. Twice, families had come to look at him. They were nice people who promised a good future, a real home with soft rugs and warm dinners. Both times he had acted up. He became sullen, rude, and withdrawn, making sure they chose one of the other, more eager boys. He knew he could not leave Clara. Leaving her here, alone in the gray building, was a thought that made his stomach turn cold. His place was with her, taking care of her. Clara understood his sacrifices without him having to say a word. When they were alone, hidden behind the high stacks of dusty books in the small and used library, she would hold his hand. "Elias," she said softly, tracing the lines on his knuckles. "I know. I am a weight." "You are my light," he corrected instantly, his voice firm. "And you are not a weight. You are just waiting for your legs to catch up with your spirit." They spent hours dreaming. Clara would talk about the world outside. She read books constantly, stories of faraway seas, high mountains, and loud cities. Elias had never left the town near Sunrise House, but through her eyes he traveled everywhere. "When I can walk, we will go to the ocean first," she announced one afternoon, her eyes shining with the salty air of her imagination. "It must be blue, a huge, scary blue. And I will carry you over the sand," Elias promised, "until your own feet are ready." "No, silly. I will run first, and you will have to chase me, you tall shadow." These dreams were their secret shelter. They built a future together, brick by imaginary brick, a future where they were both free and together. but sometimes the weight of reality broke through. One day, a girl named Susan tripped on Clara's metal frame and fell, scraping her knee. Susan's tears quickly turned to anger. "Why is she even here?" Susan shouted, pointing at Clara. "She takes up too much room. She's always slow. She's a broken doll." Before Clara could even flinch, Elias was standing between them. He did not yell back. He just stared at Susan with that quiet, intense gaze of his. "Apologize," he commanded, his voice low and calm. Susan, seeing the deep seriousness in his eyes, backed down, startled. Elias waited until she muttered a quick, unwilling apology and left. He turned back to Clara, whose face was pale. "I'm sorry," he whispered, wiping a single tear from her cheek. "I wish I could make the world better for you." "You already do," Clara replied, leaning her head against his arm. Elias was fiercely protective. He knew that Clara, though bright and brave, had a desperate longing to be normal, to run and jump like the others. He felt the unfairness of her situation like a physical ache in his own chest. His love for her was tied up with this need to protect and to serve. It was a pure, simple devotion. Then, one cold autumn afternoon, something changed. A new car, clean and shiny, not like the old beat-up vehicles that usually came to the orphanage, pulled up the drive. A lady stepped out. She was dressed in a crisp white coat, and she was not looking for an adoption. She was a physical therapist, a specialist from a distant city clinic. Mr. Davies led her straight to Clara. Elias stood by, his hands tight fists in his pockets, listening. The specialist, whose name was Dr. Helen Reyes, spoke gently but professionally. "Clara's condition is not permanent," she explained, looking at Clara's x-rays on a clipboard. "It's muscle atrophy, mostly from lack of use and early incorrect treatment. With intensive, daily therapy and proper equipment, she could regain significant function. She could even walk." The word walk hung in the air, heavy and bright. Clara's eyes went huge, shimmering with a possibility she had only dared to imagine in secret. Elias felt a sudden, massive surge of hope that made his knees weak. Dr. Reyes outlined a strict, difficult treatment plan. It would involve hours of painful exercises, new braces, and daily, absolute dedication. The orphanage could not afford the equipment, but Dr. Reyes had a grant. The grant covered the tools and her time, but it required someone to be there every single minute to assist. Someone strong, patient, and completely reliable. This person will need to be her legs, her encouragement, and her shield from the pain, Dr. Reyes said, looking pointedly at Elias. Elias did not hesitate. "I can do it," he said, stepping forward. His voice was no longer the quiet voice of the tall shadow, but the firm voice of a promise. "I will do everything she needs." Clara reached for his hand, clutching it tightly. This was it. The chance to build their future was not just a dream anymore. Elias looked into her face, already seeing the ghost of the girl who would run and chase him across the imaginary sand. He would make this happen. He would give Clara her freedom. Dr. Reyes moved quickly. Within a week, a section of the old, unused laundry room at Sunrise House was transformed. It was not pretty. Just a few mats, some simple pulleys, and a tall set of parallel bars screwed into the wooden floor. But it was clean, and it smelled of new paint and purpose. It became their world. Elias was true to his word. He became Dr. Reyes's shadow and Clara's constant anchor. He learned the names of the small, sleeping muscles in her legs, the quads, the hamstrings. He learned which exercises were meant to stretch and which were meant to strengthen. He learned to work the pulley system just right, giving enough support to let Clara try, but not so much that the effort was meaningless. The work was brutal. It was not like pushing a wheelchair, which only required strength. This work required endless patience and the ability to watch the person he loved suffer. Clara was determined, but her body fought back. When she first tried to stand between the parallel bars, leaning all her weight onto her thin legs, the pain was a shock. Her face would turn white, and tears would track slow paths through the dust on her cheeks. Dr. Reyes was professional and firm. "One more set, Clara. That's where the change happens." But it was Elias who got her through it. He didn't speak the language of muscles. He spoke the language of their dreams. As Clara struggled, straining to lift her heel, Elias would hold her steady, his face close to hers. "We are in the sand now, my son," he would whisper, wiping her forehead with a towel. "The sand is heavy, but look, the ocean is just there. Can you smell the blue?" He turned the clinic into their secret library. He made the painful minutes pass by telling her stories of the cities she wanted to see, detailing the shape of the cliffs and the rush of the imagined wind. Clara would focus on his voice, and for a few seconds, the pain would become background noise to the grand music of their future. Elias never complained about the time. He missed the boys' games, missed the quiet hours he used to spend reading, but he didn't care. Every drop of sweat Clara shed was a victory for them both. Every night, exhausted, he would carry her back to their room. "Thank you, my tall shadow," she would say, and the simple weight of her in his arms felt like the most important thing in the world. He was needed. He was essential. Progress arrived slowly, like the tide. After 3 months, Clara could transfer from her wheelchair to a chair without help. After 5 months, she was done with the heavy metal frame. She used a simple, light cane that Dr. Reyes gave her. And then, a major breakthrough. 6 months after Dr. Reyes started, Clara took 10 steps alone. They were slow, wobbly steps, but they were her steps, without the support of the bars or the cane. Elias was watching from the corner. He saw the pure, dazzling light on her face. He saw the impossible made real. He clapped until his hands stung, and Dr. Reyes smiled a rare, warm smile. Clara didn't rush to Elias. She stood there, breathing hard, feeling the floor under her feet. Then she turned and looked out the window at the wide, outside world. Elias realized she was looking at the small, patchy garden where the other children often played tag. "I can go outside," she said, her voice filled with a powerful new sound. Freedom. That word, freedom, quickly became a wall between them. The moment Clara could walk short distances, even with a cane, everything changed for her. She was no longer tied to the slow, heavy rhythm of Elias. She was no longer seen only as the girl who needed to be pushed. The other children, who had once ignored her, now approached. They saw a miracle, a story, a sign of hope. The healthy girls, who were loud and wore colorful clothes smuggled in from home, started to include Clara. They would gather near the laundry room door, waiting for her therapy session to end. "Come on, Clara," they would call. "We're going to see the kittens by the old shed. Hurry up, don't be slow." Clara, driven by a year of being left behind, started to rush. She would leave the therapy room quickly, sometimes forgetting to thank Dr. Reyes, and often forgetting Elias. Elias would stand in the empty clinic, putting away the heavy ankle weights and washing the mats. He was still the helper, but his job was finishing, and with it, his importance seemed to vanish. One day, Clara walked out on her own, cane tapping softly. Elias, still cleaning the grime off the pulley ropes, looked up and saw her moving towards the front door of the orphanage, the heavy, thick door he used to strain against with her wheelchair. A group of girls surrounded her, talking about a dance recital in town they were allowed to watch. They were calling her Miss Clara, using her full name as if she were suddenly grown up and separate. Clara laughed, a new high light sound. She looked completely different. She had cut her hair, letting it curl brightly around her face, and she wore a plain blue ribbon that matched her eyes. Elias watched her go out the door, the cane tapping a quick, eager beat on the stone path. He felt a terrible emptiness in his arms, the place where she used to rest. He went to the library later, hoping she would be waiting for him by the dusty books. But she wasn't there. He sat alone, the silence heavy. When she finally returned hours later, her face was flushed with cold and excitement. She smelled of the outside air and the stale perfume of the other girls. "Elias," she said, nodding quickly as she walked past him on her way to the room. She was distracted, already thinking of other things. "Clara," he started, standing up. "Did you see the ocean today? In the book? I found a new map." Clara paused, leaning heavily on her cane. "Oh no, I was outside with the others. They were talking about the real ocean." She spoke of the real world with a thrill that eclipsed their shared dreams. "But the sand?" Elias insisted, feeling a nervous tightening in his chest. "We were going to run on the sand." Clara sighed, a small, impatient sound. "I don't need to be carried, Elias. Not anymore. I'm strong now." That night, Elias moved his small pile of belongings. His books, his toothbrush, out of their shared attic room and into an empty room nearby. He did it quietly, in the dark, so she wouldn't notice. She was sleeping soundly, and he knew why she was sleeping alone now. She needed her space. She needed to be a person who took up her own room. Elias was no longer the mountain protecting her peak. He was just the tall shadow left in the valley. He gave her room to be free, even though the thought of her being free from him was a cold spike of pain. The following week, a new boy arrived at Sunrise House. He was 17, handsome, with bright, easy laughter, and he was quickly the most popular person there. His name was Leo. Leo was everything Elias was not: loud, charming, and focused on the future outside the orphanage. Leo saw Clara as she was now, bright-eyed, on the verge of full recovery, and popular with the girls. He did not see the wobbly steps or the scars on her knees. He saw the girl who was about to run. Elias saw them together in the dining hall. Clara was sitting straight, laughing easily at a joke Leo told. For the first time, Elias saw a look on Clara's face that was not for him. A look of pure, joyful excitement directed at someone else. Elias was still eating the same cold oatmeal, still sitting at the same quiet table. He watched Clara, now surrounded by people who had never pushed her chair, never wiped her tears, never sacrificed their own chance at a home. He knew, with a sinking certainty, that his chapter of being her necessary helper was over, and he feared that his chapter of being her best friend was ending too. The next 3 months were a rapid, silent slide toward the end. Clara stopped needing the cane altogether. Her steps became sure, quick, and light. She began to move like the other children. A sudden dash, a quick turn, a skip down the hall. Elias saw her in the patchy garden one afternoon, playing a game of catch. She ran, truly ran, her hair flying behind her. She was faster than most of the other girls. The ghost of the girl who would run on the imaginary sand was now real, but she was running away from him. Elias still helped Dr. Reyes clean the clinic, but his hands did not touch Clara. She came in only for checkups now, not therapy. The final day arrived with the sun shining, which felt unfair. Dr. Reyes stood by the parallel bars, watching Clara perform a series of quick jumps and deep squats. There was no hesitation, no pain. Her legs were strong. "That's it, Clara," Dr. Reyes announced, her voice full of satisfaction. "You are done. You don't need me, the clinic, or the equipment anymore. You are fully recovered." Clara stood up straight, vibrant, alive, and completely free. She turned to Dr. Reyes and gave her a long, heartfelt hug. "Thank you, Dr. Reyes," she whispered. "You gave me my life back." She then turned to Elias, who was waiting, heart thumping. Clara simply smiled. A bright, quick, friendly smile, the kind she gave the orphanage cook. "Thanks, Elias," she said casually. "You were a huge help cleaning up. I mean it. I can't imagine how Dr. Reyes would have done all the heavy lifting without you." Just like that, the great, devoted sacrifice he had made, the hundreds of times he had carried her, the years he had stayed so she wouldn't be alone, was reduced to cleaning up and heavy lifting. She didn't mention the sand, the ocean, or the tall shadow. She didn't mention their dream. She walked out of the clinic without looking back. Elias stayed, sitting on the cold mat. The world he had built, brick by imaginary brick, had been completely washed away by the tide of reality. Clara now spent all her time with Leo. Leo was the anchor in her new, fast life. They were never seen alone, always surrounded by popular, happy children. Leo had an energy that matched Clara's newfound freedom. They planned things, talked loudly about the town's movie theater, and whispered about escaping the orphanage as soon as they turned 18. Elias tried once more to reconnect, carrying a worn copy of the atlas they used to share. He found Clara and Leo sitting outside. "Clara?" Elias asked softly. She looked up, annoyed. "Oh, hey, Elias. I found the map of the blue water," he said, holding out the book. "The one we used to look at. I thought we could maybe—" Leo snorted and stood up, placing a protective hand on Clara's shoulder. "Hey man, she's busy. We're talking about real travel, you know? Like cars and trains. Not dusty old books." Clara did not pull away. "It's just a book, Elias," she said, dismissing him. "I don't need the maps anymore. I'll see the world for real." Elias realized that for Clara, the dreams were never a promise. They were just a waiting room. A few weeks later, the final, painful blow landed. A married couple, the Grants, arrived at Sunrise House. They were rich, organized, and had already made up their minds. Elias overheard Mr. Davies talking on the phone. Yes, they've chosen 2 of our older children, Clara and the newest boy, Leo. They're looking for a package deal, a good match. The world tilted for Elias. Clara was leaving. She was getting the escape they had both dreamed of. But she was taking Leo. Elias understood everything in that moment. Clara hadn't just forgotten him. She had replaced him. Leo was the functional, handsome accessory for her new, free life. Elias was the tall shadow of her past, the reminder of the weak, dependent girl she wanted to leave behind forever. Elias walked straight to Clara's room. She was packing a new suitcase the Grants had given her. "Clara," Elias said, his voice quiet but steady. "I just wanted to know, you told them about us, right? About the therapy, about how I helped you get well. You told them that we were a pair." Clara stopped folding a shirt. She looked uncomfortable and avoided his eyes. "Elias, you don't understand," she said, her voice dropping. "They want a fresh start. They want us to go to college. They don't want to hear about old wheelchairs and sick days." Leo is easy. He's fun. You're always so serious, Elias. You remind everyone of the old house. I need to look forward." "The old house," Elias repeated, staring at her. "I stayed here for you. I stopped myself from being adopted twice, because I promised I would be here until you could walk out with me." Clara's bright expression hardened. She finally looked him in the eye, and the look was cold, devoid of the warmth he remembered. This was the betrayal. "That was your choice, Elias," she said, finishing the fold with a snap. "And frankly, I didn't ask you to. If you chose to stay in the dust, that's not my fault. I don't need a shadow anymore. I need a future." She turned back to her packing, and Elias knew there was nothing left to say. The girl he had loved, carried, and sacrificed for was gone, replaced by this beautiful, self-serving stranger. She had used his devotion to gain her freedom, and the first thing she did with that freedom was leave him behind. He stood there for a long time. He realized she was right about one thing. He had chosen to stay. He had chosen love over his own chance at life. But that choice, even though it ended in betrayal, had made him the man he was, strong, selfless, and capable of absolute devotion. Elias left the room. On Saturday, he watched from his window as Clara, wearing a new coat and laughing with Leo, walked out of the Sunrise House and got into the shiny car. She did not look back. The next morning, Mr. Davies walked past Elias in the hall. "We need someone strong, Elias," he said. "The old wheelchair is still here. We have a new boy, Jamie, who needs help with the ramp." Elias looked at the heavy, gray wheelchair. "Yes, sir," Elias said, the old duty rising in him. But this time it was cleaner. It wasn't love or sacrifice. It was just a job. "I know how to handle the ramp. I'll get it." He was still the tall shadow of Sunrise House, but now he cast the shadow for himself, not for anyone else. He was alone, but he was finally ready for his own future, whenever it might arrive.